Hey, Shot it. All right, everybody, we're ready to get started. Um, I'm going to call this meeting of the House Rural Development Committee to order. I'm Lisa Hagan. I represent House District 156 here in South Georgia, and want to welcome members, presenters, and all of you that are here in the audience. First, I want to thank our policy analyst, Leo Chansey, who is an invaluable resource to us and to a lot of people at the Capitol. So thank you, Leo, for all your work to put this together. And I also want to make sure that I recognize Sean Spinelli up here from House Media Services. He was down here yesterday setting everything up, and he'll be here taking everything down after we leave. So we want to make sure we recognize all of his work that he does for committees as well. Okay, and I also want to thank the Mercer University School of Medicine for hosting us here today, and want to, before we do anything else, I want to call on Hugh Sosaby, who is the Senior Vice President of External Affairs for Mercer University, and he's going to say a few words to get us started.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mercer University and the School of Medicine. We're so glad that you're here. The President Underwood and our administration loves it when the legislators want to use Mercer as a venue. I hope you found it convenient to get to, even with whether you followed directions to get to the building or not. I hope it was easy, and I hope you find your time here well. Just to remind y'all, Mercer's University School of Medicine has, since its beginning, has never done anything but accept Georgians, bona fide Georgians that are residents here. Almost half of our class, thanks to Dr. McCann that's in the back of the room back there next to the television camera, has got almost half of our class is going to come from a county of less than 50,000, and Dr. Sumner has really focused on that during her tenure here. We've got the Rural Innovation Center here as well, and Glenda Grants here is going to talk to you later in the morning about it. But I want to especially thank Chair Lady Hagan for timing this Rural Development Council with our Nathan Deal Scholars and at luncheon today. And I hope many of you will join us, and if you will have room, I think, even if you haven't RSVP'd, we'll make it work. But if you hadn't, and I just want to remind you, several years back, the state had a windfall reimbursement from the federal government of some money, and they gave Morehouse $35 million, Medical College $5 million, and us $35 million. Well, Mercer put that money in a semi-endowment, and that interest off of that spins off full rides for students from rural counties again that are committed to going back to rural counties. And they basically get a full ride from that point forward when they're done it. And this is a recognition of that. And we're just so thankful to you and this council for having this meeting in conjunction with that, where you can hear and see some of the stories in these students that are intellectually fully capable of being great students, but more importantly, they bring with them the culture and the understanding of rural Georgia and the challenges and how to communicate with them, and also our behavioral background from somebody that was in rural Georgia. Sometimes we don't pay attention to some of the things that will make us healthier if we just knew it. So thank you for coming, each of you, and everybody listening too, for coming to Mercer today and honoring us with your presence and doing this. And if you need something, please grab anybody here. We want you to be happy. So thank you, and good luck with your good work this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Like everybody on this committee, I do believe that what's good for rural Georgia is good for this entire state, and it's important for members of this committee to get together regularly and learn everything we can so that we're knowledgeable of both the opportunities and the challenges that we do face in rural Georgia. So looking forward to doing just that today. So first, I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge the gracious presence of Chairman Robert Dickey, the chair of the House Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee. Thank you for being here, sir. And I would like committee members, if you would quickly introduce yourselves in your district very quickly before we get started, and we'll start down on the end. I think that's Representative Buckner on the end down there.
Thinking this is on now. I'm Debbie Buckner, and I'm glad to be here in Macon. I am the mother of 2 bears. One is a double bear, so I have had the pleasure of being here and sending some money here over the years. I am very grateful to have the opportunity to serve on this committee, and I represent Talbot, Meriwether, Muskogee, and Troup counties.
Good morning. I'm Darlene Taylor. I represent District 173, and I'm not an official member, but I'm happy to be here today. My district is Thomas and Grady County, and I'm happy to be here, and I also have 2 bears. So it's nice to be home visiting, and boy, how it's changed and grown. Congratulations, Mercer.
Good morning. I'm Gerald Green. I'm from down in southwest Georgia. I have 9 counties down in southwest Georgia, the largest House district in the state. I go all the way to Alabama and down to the Florida line. And we are happy to be here. And Lisa, thank you so much for setting all this up. And Leo, y'all did a great job once again. Thank you so much for y'all coming this morning too.
I'm Johnny Chastain. I represent the 7th District, so about as far as you can go north without going into North Carolina. I represent Fannin County, Gilmer County, and a good portion of Dawson County. And we're looking forward to this. I'm honored to be here and help on this committee with Chair Lady Hagan, so glad to be here.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Patty Marie Stinson, representing House District 150, which includes Taylor County, Macon County, Dooley County, the City of Fort Valley, the City of Americas, and the City of Andersonville. And it's always a pleasure to be on the beautiful campus of Mercer University. So good to be here and so glad to see all of you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Angie Osteen. I represent District 169, Coffee, Irwin, Turner, and Tift. Right now I have 2 Bulldogs, but I have 2 Mercer Bear hopefuls for grad school or med school. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Joe Campbell, District 171, very southwest Georgia, from below Albany basically to the Florida line. Mitchell County, Decatur, and Grady County, and glad to be here and appreciate Mercer and what it does for the state of Georgia.
Well, good morning, everybody. Glad you're here. I represent District 155 in Middle Georgia, a little about an hour southeast of here. It's Lawrence County and Johnson County. And for those of y'all on the committee and others, this is welcome here. This is where I spend my time when I'm not traveling the state with y'all. So this is my home away from home, and fortunate enough to work here in our off time. So welcome to Mercer School of Medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, committee members. Unlike most of our meetings today, where we have some leeway with time, we do have a hard stop today, members, so that we can get over to the luncheon. So for you all and also for our presenters, if we get to the point where I need to cut you off, please be understanding and forgiving of me, but we've got to keep on schedule to make sure that we give all of our speakers time to speak. But I am hoping that we'll have plenty of time for committee members to ask questions of each of them if you like. All right, and also in case we are rushed at the end and I forget to do this, I want you to know that we do have another committee member meeting scheduled for November 5th. That's a Wednesday. It'll be in Atlanta, and it will be, I think we've got that scheduled for the office building, the CLOB. So put that on your calendars. I want to make sure you know about that, November 5th. All right, well, let's get started. We're going to start with Mr. Greg Griffin. He serves as the State Auditor of Georgia. He was appointed to that position by Governor Nathan Deal in 2012. So, Mr. Griffin, thank you so much for being here today. And before you begin your presentation, would you please make sure you tell us exactly what your role is as State Auditor so that we are in full understanding there? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chairlady, and members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to be back with you today. So briefly, as State Auditor, I have a office. I'm the agency head for the Department of Audits and Accounts. We have a staff of 275 strong that our responsibility is to conduct audits of state government. So that's the departments and agencies within the executive branch. We audit the university system as well, the technical college system, local school boards as well. And we have a group that oversees and performs desk reviews of all of the local government financial reporting. So that's 530 cities and all the counties. So pretty breadth is pretty broad. We also conduct performance audits. We have a staff of about 30 folks, and again, performance audits, which are a little different than financial audits. We're looking at operating efficiency and effectiveness when we do those audits. And about half the time of the year, we are working on special requests that we receive from the appropriation chairs of the House and Senate. And so we have a list of audits that we're working on now that we'll report out right before the beginning of session. So busy times. So with that, shall we proceed? Okay. So again, appreciate the opportunity to be here to discuss the state of compliance around local government reporting. So that's going to be about cities and counties. It's been about a year ago since I last met with the council, and at that time we gave you an update. So it's been about a year. So today I'm going to report out on the significant progress that we've made since we last met, and primarily that's going to be some legislation that we have working through the General Assembly. I'm going to present the current compliance data for local governments. We will focus primarily on cities because that is where the issue is. It's less about the counties. Last year I mentioned that we had about 123 cities that were non-compliant with their financial reporting. I am glad to say that that number has leveled off, and so we're sort of standing pat at around 125 entities. I'm going to present and go over the challenges and opportunities that continue to persist. They remain the same, so that will be a recap, and then talk about sort of a path forward and next steps regarding some of the legislation that we have working through the General Assembly. So where we were, a year ago, again, last October, I met with the council, and so this is a sort of quick reminder of where we were. We had identified the problem, well documented the problem, as noted at the top of the slide there. We saw a growing trend of cities and counties that weren't meeting their annual financial reporting requirements, primarily cities, less about the counties. We identified that some of the barriers. One of those is the complex GAAP or general accepted accounting principle requirements that you have to comply with when you turn in your financial audits. That was a barrier for the smaller governments to overcome. One of the other issues and barriers is what I call SKI at these entities, SKI being skills, knowledge, and experience. And so at these smaller governments, we're seeing very little SKI, and it's harder to obtain that talent to prepare financial statements and meet the complex requirements under GAAP. And as you all know, those cities and counties that are not compliant, they lose access to funding from the state and possibly from the federal government. So we'd like to see, again, these entities compliant. We had some recommendations from the Rural Development Council. We spent last summer and fall working on those requests, and we did find ways to reduce the accounting and audit burden. We're going to talk about that. It's part of the legislation. We reviewed the various thresholds that were in our current legislation. We have made some recommendations to change those, and then we did develop recommendations and incorporated that into legislation that made its way through the General Assembly last session. So I want to talk about that legislation. We did make significant progress. It's HB 244. So again, we finalized our recommendations, incorporated that into HB 244. We worked with and supported Representative Chaz Cannon, who carried that bill and worked that bill through the House. We then worked with Senator Watson over in the Senate to make its way through the Senate committees. So we got all the way through to the Senate floor, and the legislation sort of stalled out on the last day of the general session. So we obviously know what our goal and focus is going to be as we come up to the next session. So we'll hopefully get that over the finish line. So what does HB 244 do? What will it do when it passes? And so what we're trying to do is increase the use of alternative options and frameworks to a full GAAP audit, which again is very, it's complex, it's very costly for preparers, and it's costly for auditors to audit. So what we did in the legislation is we expanded or increased the threshold to have a full GAAP audit from $550,000 of expenditures to $2.5 million. So that will, again, give more room for folks, cities and counties. I'm sorry, let me back up. This is all focused on cities. So the legislation just speaks to cities. Again, the counties are in pretty good shape. So again, the threshold for the GAAP, a full GAAP audit goes to $2.5 million. We are introducing what I call little GAAP, or a regulatory basis of accounting framework for the smaller cities. That framework is going to eliminate those complex GAAP requirements. We will retain accountability and transparency. It will reduce the cost to prepare and the cost to perform audits. So think of instead of full GAAP today, cities have to prepare like multiple sets of financial statements on a full GAAP basis, on a fund level basis, different accounting basis. We're going to propose perhaps cash basis. Very simple, one set of financial statements, fewer footnotes. We'll look at the most important footnotes that and disclosures that need to be made, things related to long-term debt and long-term commitments and those types of things. But we won't have all of the necessary footnotes and disclosures that full GAAP requires. Pensions would be a good one. We'll reduce footnotes from 20 to 30 pages of pension footnotes down to a couple with the most key information. So it's optional and available to those cities that have expenditures of less than $2.5 million. And then the other thing, we're expanding the optional use of agreed-upon procedures engagements. That is currently in statute. We're going to expand the use of that, and by increasing the threshold to use an agreed-upon procedures engagement from $550,000 to $1 million. An AUP, as I call it, is not an audit. It's not a full audit. Doesn't look for fraud. It basically answers yes or no to a set of questions that is asked. So again, it's not as comprehensive as a full audit. Therefore, it is less costly to conduct. Because it's not a full audit and doesn't look for things like fraud, we inserted a requirement that if entities are using an agreed-upon procedures engagement, that we thought it was important they actually have a full audit every 5th year for accountability purposes. So that is new language that is in the statute or proposed statute. And again, this is all city-focused, as most of the counties are compliant. This slide is a point-in-time status. It was real-time as of Saturday. This is a dashboard from our website, which I'm going to show you here in a minute or two. But what this slide tells you is for cities, looking to the left, there are 126 cities that are non-compliant, and they account for 272 financial reports that have not been submitted. Okay, so 126 cities, many of them have multiple years of audit reports that have not been turned in. Over to the right is the county summary, and again, you'll see there we have 11 reports not received. That's 9 counties. There are 2 counties that have 2 reports in arrears, Calais and Pulaski, which is rare. Typically, the counties report and everybody gets compliant at some point in time. So again, the issue that we're talking about really is a city and a small city issue. These are the trends since 2019. You can see here through 2024. I focus your attention on the on-time line. So we classify reports when they're turned in. They're either on time or they're either late or they haven't been turned in, delinquent. So you can see over time since 2019 that the on-time number has been trending down. We had a slight recovery in 2024 where we moved back up to 254 entities that were on time. Again, until you turn in your report, you're delinquent, and then once you turn it in, we determine you're compliant but late. And so so over time, you'll see, for example, for 2024, those 124, we would expect that number to drop down again to something closer to the 33 or 66 in the prior year. At that point, they will become classified as late entities. So that's the trend. The average days late, if you will, for the late folks is about 200 days. So again, the year end comes, they have 6 months to turn in a report, and then these folks are another 200 days beyond that. So the information that is finally submitted is pretty old data. So we want things to be done and submitted on time, so folks can make informed decisions. But that is the trend for the last several years. As I'm going to jump out to our local government compliance dashboard here and show you this. This is, and I showed you a map last year. This is not a localized issue. This is I think I got here right. This is a statewide issue. So here on this map, you can see all those orange dots are everybody that is ineligible or non-compliant. And if you, again, have time and go to the website, you can, if you hover over these dots, you can see exactly who is non-compliant. It'll tell you what cities and counties. If you want to look at more information here, you can zoom in, you can look at City of Adel. You can tell there that they were late from 21 to 23, and they haven't turned in their 24 report. They are delinquent.
You have some questions right now?
Only if you'll allow them, Madam Chair.
Okay, I can't see that far. Welcome, Chairman Blackman.
Thank
Yes,
you.
please ask your question.
Apologize. No, this is more process question, so to our auditor, Mr. Griffin, I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, but what will they tell you if you ask them why they're late? I mean, do you have a run-of-the-mill answer? They have a garden variety answer?
It spans. It's records. It's a lot of these areas don't have the skills, knowledge, and experience on the finance staff to actually prepare the full gap audits. They're having to have consultants come in and work on those financial statements. As advertised, there is a shortage of finance folks and auditors, and so again, all that is sort of colliding and to cause these delays.
Does it contribute to the problem? I know a lot, when you have to have an audit, you have to have somebody from the outside, compilation oftentimes can be whoever is handling your books internally. I just didn't know, some of these rural areas may not have access or as easy an access, and I'm sure that's what the conversation is about, but anyway.
That is what HB 244 tries to accomplish. We're trying to get folks to elect the optional frameworks to go use the AUP, which is less costly, less time consuming, and or the optional framework that, again, similar to cash. So that should be much easier to prepare and think about than the full gap requirements. So that is what we're trying to do.
Mr. Griffin, you've stirred up several questions, so I think if we'll go ahead and have members ask those right now before we move on.
Sure.
Chairman Hatchett.
Thank you, Chair Lady Hagan. Greg, so I would call this the financial review versus an audit. So I think you said that is due annually, and then on every 5 years, they still have to do a gap audit, correct?
They would need to do an audit. We would recommend them doing a audit under the regulatory basis of accounting framework.
Okay, so if you see in their abbreviated review that they submit to you annually, that you see something that is not right, or you think something's going on, can you order them to perform an audit? In the language that's in the bill now?
I don't believe so.
Do you think that might be advantageous to add?
It might be, yes, sir.
Okay. And is there a point, last question, sorry. And is there a point that the state and your office then, if you're not getting what you need, that y'all go in and actually perform an audit?
We do not have statutory authority to go do an audit. If asked by the local government, we can perform, but we can't actually walk in and perform an audit under the current statutes.
Thank you.
Representative Chastain, you're good. Okay. Representative Stinson, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the information. I'm just wondering, Field 244, is there any link, because I can't remember all the details of the bill at this moment, but I just really, I want to see that, or ensure that these cities take this truly serious. Because this is, to be delinquent for this many years is just not good for the citizens of these communities. And I just want to see something really tough and strong in this bill, or any bill, to make sure these cities know this is a serious matter and you need to treat it as such, and get back on track and stay on track, because the citizens of these communities deserve better. I have a seat in my district right now, Chairman Dick and I share, and been for years behind on audits, and it just, and I don't want to get so long on that, because I do get kind of upset when I think about the burden it places on to the taxpayers of that community. But that's what I just wanted to share.
So the consequence is, if you're not compliant, then you, again, don't have access to funds. You can't get to funds that the Department of Community Affairs can dole out to local governments. You can't have access to LMIG or funds from the Department of Transportation. You can't get a loan from GFA for water, sewage, those types. So that is the consequence that's currently in statute. So.
Right, I understand, but some of them still remain delinquent.
They do,
and I just want to see if there's something else that we can do that to really help them to understand this is a serious matter, and not only you can't get money, maybe your charter be taken away from you or something. I don't know. I want to be serious about this. Yeah.
I think we have one more, Representative Osteen.
What is the penalty for being delinquent?
The penalty is you become ineligible to access those other funds.
So there's no fine or anything like that? It's just you're ineligible?
It's the access to those funds.
And last question, the only way that there can be an internal audit done is if the county asks for it? That's it?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the other compliance element to this is you have to have 5 consecutive years of audits that are compliant, okay? So it's not just a one-year thing. You've got to have 5 consecutive years to be eligible. If any one of the preceding 5 years or 4 years to the current year, if you're non-compliant, you're still deemed ineligible. So it's 5 years, which is a pretty tough hurdle to get over. So I'm going to jump over here real quick to this tile, and so you can see this is a list that we call at-risk governments, and these are cities. Anybody that is 2 or more years in arrears, we consider at risk. So we have a table here that you can visit, and you can see all of the cities that are in arrears. And so so you can just scroll down. Again, you can see we've got a larger number that you saw on the previous slide of folks that are in arrears for 2023. But again, you can scroll through the list and you can see who is in arrears for multiple years. And there's Clay and Pulaski down there at the bottom. I'm going to jump out here real quick and just again, this is our live dashboard. It is live. So if a report comes in, we review it and clear it. It updates immediately to this dashboard. So, but again, a couple things here. You can quickly go to that tile and see who is eligible. If you want to just look at cities, again, you can see who is eligible or not. you have the ability to click on the particular city and drive down into the details. Again, you can see when their fiscal year end was, what their statutory due date was to submit the report, whether or not they had an extension, which we can grant every now and then you can see over the last 5 or 6 years, you know, what they did. In this particular case, they turned in late reports, or in this case, they are delinquent for 2024. Couple other, again, you can check these tiles out. There's one that, this one right here, I like because it actually tells you how many days past due they were, and again, whether they were late or delinquent. So again, there's lots of good information on the website. It's easily accessible on our homepage, and again, it is real-time information as folks turn in reports and we clear them, that it's updated automatically. So again, I'll just go back to the counties. Let me go back home, and I'll be done here. But again, you can look here. Here's the count that we showed a minute ago. There are 9 counties that are ineligible, and you can see which ones those are. I'm sorry, it's ineligible. Those are so there are the 9 counties that are ineligible. All right.
Mr. Griffin, we've got some questions and comments. Call on Representative Chastain.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Just one question on the cities. If they ask for an audit from the state, is there a cost for that?
There is not.
Okay.
My office is funded with state funds, and so if we perform an audit, it's cost.
Okay.
Cost is zero.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just have to work it into my audit plan.
Okay.
Rep. Stinson.
Yes, can we go back for just a moment? I noticed you stated there's 126 cities now. How many was it back in last year?
So a year ago, it was 123 cities. So again, I think we've stabled off, or we've become stable, or leveled off, if you will, on the number of entities that are non-compliant. So again, 126 today, 123 last year at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I needed. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to jump back into my presentation, I think. All right, there we go. I've lost the clicker. What did I do with the clicker? Yep, thanks. All right, going to move on. I'm almost finished, being mindful of time. So this slide sort of demonstrates what the impact is going to be on various populations under HB 244. So on the top row, again, we have 530 cities with the new requirements in the bill for expenditures less than or equal to $1 million. 204 of those cities are now going to be eligible for that AUP audit. That's up from that is up from 142. So an increase there. Again, it's optional. They have to elect to have that type of engagement. The new optional framework regulatory basis for if you had expenditures of less than 2.5 million, 283 of those, so almost half of the current cities would be eligible to elect that, and then the requirement for a full gap audit, there would be 247 cities that would have to have a full gap audit. Today, 388 have to have a full gap audit. just in looking at the populations, the current populations of compliant entities and delinquent entities, again, if you are currently compliant today, 134 of those folks could elect to have an AUP. 194 could be eligible for, again, the optional regulatory basis, and then 210 of those would be required to have a full audit. And again, of the delinquents on the last row, most of the delinquent cities would be eligible to use the new RBA framework or an AUP, and 70 of them could use the AUP, and many of them don't, to be honest. There's a very small number of folks that still request or have a full audit performed, even though they have the option today to conduct a agreed upon procedures engagement. So 89 of those folks could apply for the regulatory framework if they wanted to. 37 of those would still have to have a full audit because of their expenditure, the level of their expenditures. To Chairman Blackman's question, these are the issues that, again, why folks don't turn in their audits. They're not prepared for again, these are pretty much the same issues we talked about a year ago and actually 2 years ago when we first talked about this issue. Again, difficult to get an audit, hire an auditor and get a timely audit performed. Lots of turnover still in these smaller cities. I added the third box, the skills, knowledge, and experience, because I think we didn't talk about that last time, but that's a key issue. Many of these folks don't have records, and once you miss a year, it sort of creates a spiraling effect. Once you get 2 or 3 years past that first one, the records become even harder and harder to locate. This is a quick summary of the timeline for HB 244. We're hoping it'll pass out of the 2026 session. My office will have to develop the regulatory basis framework. We expect to have that finished. Again, if passed, it'll take us to December to build that framework out. We'll make it effective for January 2027, so we don't expect to see a regulatory basis report until June of 2028. Folks, though, can elect to have an agreed upon procedures almost immediately upon passage. So hopefully we can figure out how to convince folks to move in that direction. Last but not least is, again, these are, it's a recap of the expected benefits from HB 244. We talked about this a year ago. Again, reduced audit time and cost. Again, the AUP should be about a 50% estimated savings. Simpler to train folks, should be able to get these audits done more timely and get access to state funds. And again, you can see the benefits for the state over to the right. And with that, I'll take any remaining questions that y'all have. And on the slide there, that's my office phone number. I'll give you my cell number. You can call me directly. Some of us have us on speed dial, but 770-274-9149. That is my direct line, and 770-274-9149. And I will. That's my cell number, and I'll take your calls.
Committee members, do any of you have any remaining questions? And Leo will be sending out a copy of this presentation to you after the meeting, so you'll have all this information soon. Well, if there are no other questions, Mr. Griffin, I can't thank you enough for the work you do in your office and for being here today to present to us. And thank you specifically for your work on House Bill 244. I know that my constituents want transparency. And while I definitely don't want to be overly burdensome to cities who have various issues, I also want to make sure that the people that elect them, that elect us, know what their government's doing, and you know, hopefully the Senate will pass House Bill 244 this session, and we can move on with that. Do you know if Senate committee made any amendments to that bill? Will it have to come back to us for a degree?
They made no amendments.
No,
I think
so we just need.
It goes back to a committee and move forward.
Okay.
So far, no amendments.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter will be Charlie Garbett. He's going to come and speak to us about state income tax credit program for rehabilitated historic property. And I do appreciate you, Charlie, being here with us this morning and talking to us about that tax credit and also what you've been doing along those lines of late. So thank you for being here.
Can I say something?
Chairman Hatchett would like to make a comment.
I just wanted to add a little bit to Charlie's introduction. He is the founder of Garbett Construction, and he's still kind of tied to it. I think he has an office there, and I think he goes and makes sure they're working. But his company has received multiple awards for renovation of historic properties across our state, especially at many of our institutions of higher learning. So I just want to throw that in. He knows that business. So glad you're here, Charlie.
Thank you, Matt. I'm chairman of the board of Garbett Construction Company. That means they let you have an office. That's all that means. Anyway, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is historic tax credits. We do a good bit of historical restoration, so you can imagine it's important. How's that? Better? Okay. We do a good bit of historical restoration, and so it's very important to my company. It's important to my industry, but it is a game changer for my community, and I hope I get a chance to talk about that a little bit. There are two kinds of tax credits. Federal tax credit, which is very similar to a state tax credit, which I think is primarily the subject that you'd like for me to talk about, but they're very similar, but there are some significant differences, and some of those differences make a big difference. State tax credits, you can get a historical tax credit for a property that is in a national register district, or it's a national designated as a national register building. It has to be an income producing, the federal has to be an income producing property. The state has a provision for residential property as your personal residence. The federal does not. Your project must be approved by the state Georgia Historical Preservation Division. It must be a qualified rehab. At least 5% of the expenditure has to go on the exterior of the building, and it has to be in accordance with historical standards by the National Park Service. This information comes from Georgia Trust. Georgia Trust is sort of the advocate for historical restoration in the state of Georgia. And I sit on that board, and State tax credits are very important to folks on that board. This is a little data about numbers from 2019 to 2024. There were 295 certified projects, 802 million and change. And from 23 and 24, you see the numbers. There were 81 applications. Final certifications, there were 55. It amounted to $119,298 and $119,298,119. The leverage ratio is 1 to 5.7. That's pretty significant ratio. I would make the case to you that historical tax credits is the poster child almost for public-private partnerships and incorporation for development. It is especially important for rural communities, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Georgia Trust has an objective to fix the legislation on historic tax credits. It is basically now non-functioning, and I'll go into that in just a little bit. The state tax credits gives you 25% of what you spend on qualified rehabilitation on a project. That can be a game changer for a project. It can make a marginal project a good project, and it is a great incentive to developers to spend money on communities. The problem right now is that it is capped in the state of Georgia at $30 million annually, which means once those tax credits have hit $30 million, they're capped and they're no more available. It's a first come, first served basis. I want to go into the problem that causes in just a minute if I could. The Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation has brought together our shareholders and stakeholders, and that we seem to have a lot of bipartisan support. And I'll talk about what they're asking for. I disagree with them a little bit, but anyway, I'll go into that. There's a lot of talk about eliminating income taxes in the state of Georgia. And this could have a significant consequence to historic tax credits. And so the point that the industry would like to make and Georgia Trust would like to make, there are some short-term things that can be done. I mean, I don't know how quick y'all can get rid of the income tax, but I think it might take a little while. And so in the interim, there are some things that could be done. In the medium term, there are projects in the pipeline that will not have access to credits if the current program is not fixed in this session. In the long term, it could have a dramatic effect, but here's where we are right now. If I have a project that I want to submit for a state tax credit, we are already capped out through the year of 2029, which means if I need that tax credit to make that project work, I'm ineligible for it. So the program is basically dysfunctional as of now because that's capped out. And that means that that pretty makes the program ineffective. One of the ways that these tax credits can make a project work that doesn't normally work is they can be monetized. There is a way to take that tax credit, and this is not the correct legal term, but you can sell it. And those monies can be the difference that make a project work. Well, if you want to sell a tax credit in 2025 that you can't get until after 2009, you've got nothing to sell. Nobody's going to buy a tax credit that's 5 years out, especially since this program sunsets at the end of 2029. That's a big problem for the use of tax credits in our industry. This is the number of states that have historical tax credits. 24 of them have credits that are more than 25%. State of Georgia is 25%. I just enumerated the problem. Here's what Georgia Trust is advocating. They are advocating that the tax credit be expanded from 30 million to 60 million. Would certainly help, but I don't think it'll alleviate the problem that it's causing. If it takes 4 years now before you can get into a year that will allow the tax credits at 30 million, if you go to 60 million, you've helped the problem, but you're still probably 2 years out, which makes those tax credits hard to monetize. I would advocate that the cap should be eliminated. There is no cap on the federal, and to solve the problem that I just described, if you eliminate the cap, that eliminates the problem. We'd certainly be happy to get any relief. Georgia Trust is advocating for 60 million, but I think you would do a better service to communities to remove it altogether. And it is a good investment. There's a good return on the investment for the state, and it doesn't make a lot of sense from my perspective to have it capped, but that's a problem y'all can solve maybe. Ms. Hagan asked me to talk a little bit about some projects that we've done, and I want to talk a little bit about mine and Matt's community. The historic tax credit has been a game changer for Dublin. This is our mayor, one of Matt and my good friends, Phil Best. He's not the mayor now, but he served mayor for Dublin for 22 years, and he's going to tell you a little bit about Dublin's perspective on the tax credit, if I can make this work. Uh-oh. I'd help you if I could, Leo. I can paraphrase it. I can paraphrase it. I've heard him say this 100 times.
We're going to receive this presentation, so we'll be able to see it once it's emailed to us. But if you want to paraphrase it for us, Charlie, go ahead.
Phil was the mayor of Dublin for 22 years. And he tells the story about economic development and industry prospects coming to Dublin. And Matt, you've heard this too. But he says the last place they would take an industry prospect at about 2002 was downtown Dublin. It was not a thing we were real proud of. In the last 5 years, downtown Dublin is the first place we take an industry prospect. Your downtown is your identity, and it is a big important part of industrial recruitment, and it has played a large part in what's happened in the renaissance of downtown Dublin. You asked me to talk about a couple of projects. This is sort of our poster child. This is the old First National Bank building known as the Skyscraper to Dublin. It was built in 1911 at the height of cotton in Georgia. And Dublin was a pretty significant agricultural center until 1933 in the boll weevil. And this building stayed vacant until we restored it for the previous 50 years. No tenants except pigeons. But this project was the elephant in the room in downtown Dublin. And when it got restored, it changed the whole perspective of what was going on in downtown Dublin. It would not have happened without historic tax credits. Absolutely would not have happened within historic tax credits. Not only does the tax credit buildings restore their building, it is a catalyst for investment in downtowns. We've had 5 tax credits in downtown Dublin, but we've had $50 million worth of investment in downtown Dublin in the last few years. It spawns redevelopment in downtown. And anyway, and I want to show you another project so you don't think it's got to be a multi-million-dollar project. Well, let me show you this. This was the old First National Bank building before restoration. This was afterwards. This is the difference it can make. In contrast, it's not always the big restoration of commercial buildings. This is a house in my neighborhood, and it received a historical tax credit. It was $134,000 of money spent on it, and we got a $26,800 federal tax credit and a $33,500 state tax credit. It can revitalize neighborhoods. It's not all downtown. So, I'll try to answer any questions I can about historic tax credits and what it's meant to our community or whatever. But right now, it's dead on the water unless the legislature does something.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. You do have at least one question. Representative Osteen.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. Maybe we can just kind of banter back and forth. Who can apply for these historic tax credits?
The owner of the property.
The owner of the property, whether it's city, county, or a individual land or individual property owner?
Cities and counties don't typically do it because it has to be an income-producing property.
Okay. How is the award amount determined?
It's determined by how much qualified restoration costs are expended, and you get 25% of that. Not everything in a project might be included. Landscaping's not, appliances that aren't fixed to the building are not, but most of the work is, and you're entitled to 25% at the state, 20% at the federal.
Okay, and then what kind of cycle does that run on? So you said we're already booked out 4 years to 29. What kind of cycle does that run on?
Not sure I quite understand what you're asking, but you've got 2 years to complete the project. And when you complete the project, you have to demonstrate that you did what you submitted you were going to do. And then you get, you're eligible for the tax credit the next year unless the cap has been reached. The cap has been reached for 25, 26, 27, and 29. So you, and this legislation sunsets in 2029, so
So nobody's really applying, well, it's booked, but nobody can apply. That's why I guess I'm trying to figure out, when can you apply? It seems odd that we can apply for, it's 25 and I can apply for a 29 credit.
well, the reason it's 29 is because the state allows $30 million worth of tax credits. And once that's capped, then it goes to the next year. Well, 25 is capped, 26 is capped, 27 is capped, 28 is capped, 29 is capped. So there's no credit available at this point. So it's a dysfunctional system right now, unless y'all expand the 30 million.
Thank you.
I got one.
Chairman Hatchett.
So Charlie, is it fair to say that probably or possibly renovation or restoration on historic property has possibly stalled for a little while?
It's stalled. Fed is not stalled. State is stalled. Now, you can still get the federal tax credit, and it's not capped. This is an opinion, but I'll tell you what I think the problem is. The problem is Atlanta is getting all of the tax credits.
That's the problem.
And the problem, I mean, if $30 million is capped, that is 6 $20 million projects. Atlanta will eat up 6 $20 million projects in no time. And so rural Georgia is getting shortchanged. You take the cap off, then it's there for everybody. But I mean, if you can see that it's 4 years out now, and if y'all don't, and if it sunsets and the legislation doesn't get renewed or whatever, it's no reason to apply for the tax credit. But it is a life-saving tool for communities. It has been for mine. I think Matt would attest to that.
Chairman Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think Mr. Garbutt made the point pretty clear, and I think that's what we've been bouncing into. I appreciate the fact that you're in the business, and I appreciate what you're doing with all that. Now, we've seen a bill that doubled that 30 to 60 million, but it does seem to toggle between who's gonna get the money. Is it gonna go to the metro areas and get sunk into these bigger projects, or are we gonna get it in rural Georgia, and how do you carve that out? Personally, our discussions, and I just had this with Representative Buckner, is how do you uncap it and ensure that rural Georgia doesn't get overlooked in that process? And I would totally 100% agree that we need more investment in this arena. The audits come back really, really solid, just as you pointed out, and not less. So we've looked at 2 or 3 different bills. I'd be happy to sit down with you right here, right now. I bet we could crank this thing out pretty quick. But thank you again for your presentation. And we had there is a little bit. I think the disagreement is on the details and how to expand it, where to expand it, who gets what, and all that kind of stuff. And it seems to be there's a bit of a disagreement among parties, among stakeholders. And we'll get it worked out, but it's been one of those things. It's a complicated tax credit, I think, as you pointed out, Mr. Garbutt. So anyway, we look forward to more discussions. We're almost there.
Be happy to talk to anybody anytime about it. It's very important.
Thank you, Chairman Blackman, for that. Chairman Taylor, did you look at me because you have something you want to say, or were you just looking in this direction?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I got you. Did you have a question? No, okay. Representative Stinson.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation. And I think this question was asked already, but I don't recall the answer. Exactly who can apply for these tax credits? It's not the city and county governments, right? But if the city and county governments are delinquent on their audits, then the applicant for these tax credits, chances are getting these tax credits or what, actually?
I don't know the question about whether an
Who,
audit affects it or not, but cities and counties don't pay income tax. This is an income tax credit.
okay,
So it's a for-profit business or for-profit individual that pays taxes are the ones that are eligible,
got it.
which is private money, which,
Okay. And I think you answered my question. I'm just trying to figure out another way to force these cities to get their audits caught up. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stinson. Looks like, unless we've got any more questions from the committee, I think that's it. But I appreciate you being here so much
Thanks for the
and
opportunity.
for bringing this information to us today. Thank you. Look forward to seeing that video when we get it in our email. All right, our next presenter is going to be Mr. Jimmy Lewis from Hometown Health. He can talk about it all day, but I've told him he has 20 minutes. While he's getting ready, I'll mention that I spent Monday and Tuesday of this week touring. I think I actually visited 7 hospitals with Jimmy down in South Georgia, talking to them about some of their challenges and opportunities. That's corporate speak that my husband taught me. They do have a lot of challenges, but there are a lot of opportunities there, right?
Yep.
You could talk to us about some of that?
I shall.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jimmy Lewis, and I appreciate the opportunity to be before you to share some information pertaining to rural hospitals. And I'll apologize at the front end of this conversation. I get rather passionate. When I do, I get rather loud. When I get rather loud, I get rather fast. So put all those things together, and that's kind of where we may be going. So you just tell me to hush when it's time to hush. But I do appreciate the opportunity. My name is Jimmy Lewis, and I'm CEO of Hometown Health. I formed Hometown Health 26 years ago. Prior to that, I served in 8 Fortune 500 companies doing buying, selling, and all that kind of stuff that you do in those kind of things, and gained a fair amount of experience in finance and structure of debt and those kind of things. I'm from Coryell. I grew up on a farm. I can talk to you about picking cotton in a sack, slopping hogs, and doing all of the things that you do on the watermelon market. So that's kind of my background. Have been doing this for 26 years for the sole purpose, for the mission it is to do whatever it takes legally, morally, and ethically to keep a rural hospital from closing. In that period of time, 20 years or so, unfortunately, we have seen 20 hospitals close as a minimum. And I'll talk a little bit about how and why. I sat in on most of those closures, and the closure that occurred because of situations that got out of control, and we'll talk about how they get out of control. If I can figure out how to do this, Leo. Yeah, okay, good. We don't need to see him. Closed hospitals. These are some hospitals that have closed, and this was 15 on this list, and there's been another in this 20 years. You can see Banks County, Calhoun, Charlton, Chattooga, Dooley, Gilmer, Hancock, Hart, Lumpkin, Randolph, Stewart, Telfair, Trutland, Turner, Wheeler. McRae is to be added to this one, and a number of others. I show you this to say this is real. And this is real, and it represents, in my opinion, because I'm biased, it represents a neglect by senior policy situations pertaining to cash. Now, I'll share with you that say, what's the problem? And I'll just tell you, the problem is number one is cash. We have been underpaid since 1999. In 1999, there was an economic problem, and the governor at that time sought to fix it by cutting it out of Medicaid. And the problem was then, when he cut it out of Medicaid, he cut Medicaid to 85.6% of costs, and we've been underpaid for the last 20 years. And when you're underpaid for the last 20 years, you use up everything. And we, at this stage of the game, are in a situation where we are basically have used up everything on so many of these hospitals. At this stage of the game, not only have we closed these, but another 5 or so. We've shared this morning, we've got at least 6 right now that can close in the morning, literally. And that's because of the situation pertaining to cash. And you say, well, you know what, they just don't know how to run a hospital. We list, thank you, Madam Chairman, for joining us on the trip. Yes, we several of you have been with us on these trips, but we went to 7 or 8 hospitals yesterday in 24 hours, 500 miles, and listened to 7 or 8 presentations as to what their situation was. So this is a for real deal. And out of that situation where we listened to what was going on, what we learned is you could work yourself to the bone and still lose. And the way you can work yourself to the bone and still lose is you're totally dependent upon cash. You're totally dependent upon cash. And basically, we're at a point of being about 70%, 70 or 80% single payer situation, because we're in Medicare and Medicaid at that rate. And at that rate, we're still being underpaid. And because we're being underpaid, you use up your asset over time. We heard that yesterday. We heard a particular hospital that told us, and they did a great job. They did a great job in the presentation. They did a great job in outlining what they have done. They have done everything that they could within their power to save the hospital. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, as I was sitting listening to it, I had to tell them, you may be over. You may be finished. You may be finished even as we speak, sitting right here today. And that's the situation that we heard then and other time, and then we've heard this morning from what you have just heard up on the border of Georgia. What's the problem? The problem is cash, and it's simply stated, it's just cash. When you are, well, let me back up and say that the problem is we have evolved into this. You must know that it takes 40,000 populations to support a hospital. And in Georgia, if we look at all of the counties that we've got, the plethora of counties, what we must understand is in rural Georgia, most of the counties are between 10 and 16 to 17 to 18,000 population. That population difference from 40 down to 10 or whatever, that has to be translated into loss. Typical loss on a rural hospital without subsidies is $2 to $3, sometimes $4 million with what they have to go through. In order to offset that, what has occurred is it typically is offset by subsidies from the county. And as we have looked over the years at subsidies from the counties, we see that the subsidies are more and more and more difficult to get to because of any variety of issues from an economic development standpoint, one of which I want to share with you that I think is catastrophic in what we're about to go into. We're in a situation where we've got 2 paper plants that are going to close in Savannah. We've got one that's going to close over there in Chairman Green's location. We got 3, possibly 4. The interesting thing about that is that particular industry in the wood industry pays a lot of taxes. When they close, they quit paying taxes, and when they quit paying taxes, that translates into a subsidy loss over into the healthcare situation. And basically what we're doing is we're experiencing or about to experience a tremendous loss of support for healthcare through that one avenue alone. Now, we can talk about a whole bunch of other things that are extremely important in cash. We're in the middle of that big, bad, beautiful bill. I think that's the way you say that. It's a big, bad bill, or it's a big, beautiful bill. But the truth of the matter is we don't know what it is. We attended a conference a couple of weeks ago, and in attending that conference, we had people there that really, really know what's going on. They're consultants and people from all over the nation, and gathered, and we listened to them talk. It was so alarming to listen to them talk over the fact that ain't nobody got a clue. We understand we got rural this and rural that, and we got $50 billion that's going to be taken care of rural. Nobody can tell you with any certainty what's going to happen in that situation. Because of that, and because of that uncertainty, from a healthcare standpoint, you don't know how to invest. You don't know how to you don't know how to prop it up. You don't know how to prop the hospital up. You don't know how to prop the workforce situation up. So it's a real problem from a cash standpoint that we get into. Let me share with you a couple of other things. These are some of the problems. This is not new news to you, but these are some of the problems that we're experiencing right now, and we heard that as we traveled around. We obviously got a workforce shortage, and that workforce shortage is growing and growing and growing because, you know, the truth of the matter is, unfortunately, unless you like to fish and hunt, a lot of people don't want to come to rural Georgia, particularly from a skill set standpoint, whether it be doctors or PAs or whatever the case may be. So that's an issue, and it's a big-time issue. We can have a hospital that's basically shut down because we can't get the proper workforce to support the work. Financial stress from the COVID and the pandemic, it's hard to describe in a rural hospital what happens when you run this much out of cash. In the normal world that I would come from and you would come from a business standpoint, what we would have is we'd have a bankruptcy situation. We'd run out to a point where we run out of cash and we run bankrupt. Unfortunately, what happens in a rural hospital is you don't necessarily run into bankruptcy. You rather run into insolvency. And insolvency is an instantaneous problem. Best illustration, we had one years ago, it was over in Arlington, and it did indeed, we could see it was going down, running out of cash, but it did indeed approach insolvency. Kept talking about we were going to run out of cash, we're going to run out of cash, we're going to run out of cash. The board met on like a Monday morning and said, we're out of cash, what do we do? And they shut the doors on Thursday. Insolvency becomes instantaneous. We've got that 6 that could be insolvent tomorrow, and then those people at the federal level who do analyses in some of the consultational worlds tell us that we have as many as 30 in the state of Georgia that are vulnerable. 30 vulnerable, 6 tomorrow, and when that goes, that's the largest employer in the community. That's all of the health care that goes with it. That's everything associated with the viability of the community. Other issues, I'll come back to this one, AI transition. I'll come back to that one and share with you. I did that in a committee a couple of weeks ago. CON and AMSurge has been an issue. People, they're not as much into that today, but that has been a problem. But pandemic readiness. Pandemic readiness is the whole issue of what do we do to be prepared for when this is going to happen again? And then the answer is, well, it ain't going to happen again. Well, I lived in Albany, Georgia in 1994, and the situation was then, we won't have a problem over there, so we had a 500-year flood. Well, that won't happen again, so we had another 500-year flood. So these things happen, they're for real, and if you aren't prepared for them and aren't ready for them, they'll sink your ship. By the way, I watched 1,000 coffins come up out of a cemetery in Albany, and 24 people died. Inflation, we talk about inflation. The truth of the matter is inflation affects everything pertaining to the rural hospital, the goods that are purchased, the salaries and the labors, and all sorts of things like the deterioration of the facility. I won't forget it. It wasn't funny, but I had an opportunity to ride by a hospital that was about to close, and everybody said, well, it won't close. Well, I'll tell you what it was. It was McRae. We had a situation where the hospital got in trouble. It needed some money, had a little money in a little reserve fund, $250,000 is what it needed. They had a meeting on a Monday night to get some money out of that fund. They gathered around, sat around the room, and I sat and looked at the room and said, well, this ought to be a piece of cake. Well, one person stood up in the meeting and said, I'm sorry, I represent 10 farmers and we're going to vote no, and you won't get this money, and the reason we'll vote no is because we don't want to raise our taxes on our farms any more than they already are. And that hospital was told that it would close, again in McRae, it was told that it would close, and it would close in short order. It closed in short order, and it only cost them 1,000 jobs. That's the problem. That's what equates to each one of these situations that occurs. Other initiative problems that we got here, we have cash flow problems that are so complex that even people that really supposed to know what they're doing can't figure out how to do it. One of which is, for example, by the way, I'm politically incorrect as required, and this is one of those. So whether we get into pathways or whether we get into other means of getting cash out into the community, we've got problems of complexity that we struggle to deal with, and that's not changing in a hurry, and it wouldn't change in a hurry, so that's an important one. The economic consuming labor, we heard one yesterday. I remember the situation with respect to labor when the dollars per hour were $7 an hour, and now we're $15 an hour, $20 an hour, and we heard differentials in shift differentials. Well, I think it was like $12 or $14 a shift differential. And we got to understand that this is, you either do this or you go out of business instantly, and that's the problem that we've got. The next subject is kind of interesting, and that is payer mix. The payer mix is crazy. Payer mix says that we learned again yesterday in reinforcement that the payer mix with Medicare and Medicare Advantage is 70 to 75% of the income, and when you're losing 2 to 5% on each one of those, you're digging your grave even deeper than that. The paramedic says as we saw, think about this. As a business, it typically can lose 7% to 12% in self-pay. Self-pay means that people comes in the door, you got to provide them with the care, and you're not going to get paid for 7 to 10 to 15% of your in quote income. 340B program is a very complex program for the situation with respect to drugs and pharmaceuticals. Extremely important, but it's under fire from the feds. And then the last thing I got here is transport issues, and transport issues are just very simply, we got situations where we can't get people to the hospital, and if we do, somebody's got to pay to get them there, and we don't have the ability to get them paid. This is some of the problem. But let me give you, like I mentioned, cash and CON provision and this kind of stuff, and I'll just run through these. This is what I call the new world problems. On top of all of that other stuff, this is the new world problems. And you'll feel it when I tell you. I call it a water grid. I call it a water grid. And the water grid means that we're putting data centers in around the state. They're going to work their way into the rural Georgia. And as they work their way into the rural Georgia, they need a lot of water. And who's got the water? We don't know. Housing shortage. We just had an announcement over on the coast about with a housing shortage. What we're like 11,000 units short in about a 10 county area there. Electric grid. We're short on the electric grid. That means we ain't got enough electricity to support what we just sold our goods on. The data grid. This whole new subject that I'll talk just briefly about is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a function of data. Data's in data banks all around the nation, and we have banks, and we have to be able to manage them, and it's killing us. Data centers, if you look at the data centers that are in the state and how big they are and what they're doing, it's unbelievable. When a data center, when built, has a facility that's the size of the Mall of Georgia, that tells you got a challenge on your hands. There are other issues here, but the last one, or next to the last one, is the one that's really interesting. We have closed 14 OB units. We just closed 2 more. An OB unit is the lifeblood of a community. When we give it up, we automatically sign off on the life of the community. It's gone. And we just have, Wayne County just closed one, and Livonia just did one. This is critical. Everything is critical, but this is critical because it's instantaneous, and we got others that are looking to make changes in their OB situation. And then the last one is natural disasters that never occur, except we had 2 back-to-back 500-year floods, and then we had Helene and all that goes with it. I share that to say that the situation is what has caused this in large part, the technology problems, the whole difficulty of being paid, but the other part of it is kind of strange, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier. We have had the urbanization of the legislature to make decisions that are unrelated to rural, and because we've got decisions that are unrelated to rural, we got a problem. And that's growing worse and worse on a daily basis. So with that said, it kind of tells you, like, it's overwhelming. We live it. My group lives in it. I got 20 people that work with us, and those 20 people have 400 years experience. And we run out of resources to help rural hospitals except on a crisis situation. I'll hush with that and take any questions, but.
Thank you, Jimmy. Any members have questions? I don't see any. Well, thank you so much for all of your information and for the knowledge that I received earlier this week. I appreciate it.
This lady's a road warrior. And for those of you, several have been on one of these trips. This is a road warrior trip, and she withstood it and did so well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Members, you've got a packet in front of you from the Georgia Rural Health Innovation Center. And I'm so excited that we're going to hear from Glenda Grant today. She's the executive director. And you got plenty of time. So come on up and tell us what we need to know. And well, up until we have to get on the shuttle to go to lunch, you've got plenty of time. You do.
But I do want to take a moment to say this. It is not a mistake that I'm here talking to you today. Today, at this very time, I was undergoing surgery to be medically cured of cancer. And that happened because I had a fantastic rural physician. And she said, I know you are busy, but it is important that you go and get this mammogram done. And I had put it off and put it off. And she said, I'm going to text you next week. And she always says change happens at the speed of trust. And I trusted that she was going to text me until I went and got that test done. And so I went and did that. That didn't happen by accident. I did not have a history, no symptoms, none of those things, but she cared about me. And that matters. And so I thank you to you all. I thank you to Mercer. Mercer was there with me every step of the way, too. Every doctor that I had was either a Mercer graduate, a Mercer preceptor, or a Mercer professor. And then in every surgery, in every appointment, I had a Mercer medical student. So it was providential that I was there. So thank you for prioritizing rural care. It doesn't happen by accident, and every rural Georgian deserves excellent health care. Not something that's hobbled together or better than nothing. They deserve excellent care. So thank you for the priority that you put on that, and thank you to Mercer. I have the privilege of being here every day, but they make a difference, and it matters, and you make a difference, and your work matters. So thank you for that. So I'm so excited to be here this year and not there that I was last year. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about rural health care. So what does making a difference look like? Well, thanks to you all, the center was funded back in 2018 by a House bill to address rural health care. And that's a big order. And so it was awarded at Mercer, and that was no mistake, because Mercer, since its inception, as you heard this morning, through scholarships and everything else, all they address is rural. That is their mission. It is why we have the doors open, and it's what we do every single day. So the Rural Health Innovation Center is here on the Mercer campus, embedded into the School of Medicine. And so people oftentimes say to me, well, what does the Georgia Rural Health Innovation Center do? Because that's a mouthful. And I tell them we do a lot of different things. Every day looks a little bit different than the last, but the main thing that we do is we show up in rural communities. We only work with the 120 rural communities in Georgia. We go there. Their relationships can't be built over a Zoom call. You cannot see what's going on in a community by looking at data, especially secondary data. So you have to go to the communities. And most of us are from rural communities, so that's going home. We love to do that. So we go into these communities, we talk to the people that live and work there, and we work with them to come up with solutions. Rural Georgians are resourceful. They are smart folks. They often know how to solve problems. They just don't have the resources or the connection to do that. So that's what we do, day in and day out. One of the first things that we do is, just like Mr. Lewis alluded to, is propping up and ensuring that our hospitals have good training. In the legislation, it said for us to improve rural health care, but it only had one specific mandate, and that was for us to go in and do leadership training in rural hospitals. And so that's what we do. We partner with GHA and with Hometown Health. We developed a curriculum with initiatives that looked at the fiduciary responsibility, the grant management, their planning, all of the compliance issues. Healthcare is very complex. And a lot of times boards are made up of people who are great business people in the community, but they may not know about hospitals. And so sometimes it's startling to them, and they'll hear great things, and they're like, oh, we're doing fantastic. And then they hear, oh, we're on the list for a possible rumor of a closure? How did that happen? And so we go in and educate them about what it means to run a well-run hospital. So that is our one task item. The rest of the stuff is the fun stuff where it happens. So just as he alluded, there are 120 rural counties. 93 of those have no labor and delivery units. So that means that 2/3 of rural women deliver outside their home county. So while we're number one to do business in, we are at the bottom of the list in maternal mortality. And that's a problem. And when I first came to the center, I worked at Mercer before that, and I came to this center, I had to speak to the Rural Development Council 7 days into my tenure. So that was scary. But I'll never forget the chairman at the time looked at me at the end of it, and he said, these are great statistics, and they're great studies, and I'm so glad you're doing that, but what are you doing about it? And that has rung in my ears ever since. I say that to my staff just about once a week. What are you doing about it? So any research that we do, anything that we do something about it. It's not good enough to know the problems. You have to have solutions. And rural Georgians are ready and wanting to do that. So one of the solutions that we have for maternal health is our observership program. This is open to all rising first-year medical students in Georgia to come and experience this. You don't know what it's like until you do it. And so we take students that are coming up that are interested in OB and becoming OBGYNs, and we take them and put them with rural OBGYNs. And they do translational research, which means it's not just bench research, which is wonderful, but we need that translational where they need to see that the problems are and then come to us with solutions on how to fix them. So they work with OBGYNs who are already in the field to come up with solutions to solve those problems in rural Georgia. And so each of them conducts that research. They spend 6 weeks with them out in rural Georgia. And it's also a pathway and a pipeline to get them to those rural communities so that we don't have that big wide gap in OBGYNs. So the only thing that makes a difference is great maternal care. And so we need doctors to do that. The other thing that we do is the Maternal Health Symposium. We do the other to get the pathway for more doctors. We do this for the doctors that we have. So 100 physicians and providers come. We talk about what's working in rural Georgia and how to have solutions for that. So it's not just coming for training, it's also working through solutions to make that better. We hold that every June. Everything that we do here is free. It's provided through Mercer and through the Innovation Center, and so we encourage people to come for that training. Of course, we never have enough mental health care, and that's always an issue for Georgians. And so as you can see in this map here, we began looking at, during the pandemic, we had a call from a school system that said, we need some real care for our kids. We have been out, that particular school system had been out for 1.5 years. They had not been in person. And so we began thinking about solutions. So we looked at our safety net, our CSBs. Where are the providers? Where are those things? And they had a problem too, is workforce. They had provisionally licensed people who could not get paid for services to be in the workforce because they had to pay for supervision. So they were doing other things. When you don't have providers and you have a gap that you need that care for kids, that's what made us think about the Pediatric Mental Health Initiative. So we took those provisionally licensed people and we said, we'll give you free supervision to become licensed providers if you'll see our kids in rural communities by telehealth for free. And they jumped on that. And that is a wonderful system. And so we began getting calls from all over the United States. How are you doing it? How is this working? And it works quite easily because our partners in rural communities are hungry for solutions. And they will bend over backwards. They love their kids. They love their communities. And they're going to do what's needed to do to remove barriers. So we set this up. So we're in 16 schools right now. We began in Ben Hill County. They said, yes, we'll do whatever it takes. Get it in here. Can we start tomorrow? And so we began there, and now we're in 16 schools doing this. We have 3 school districts on the wait list. We are looking to expand that with more supervisors. That's our holdup right now. So we're working with additional schools, and we're in communication with additional schools, Valdosta, University of Georgia, and others, to have additional supervisors that will take these provisionally licensed folks to get them into the pipeline, to get them working in rural. And I will just say, there's no better way to get people working in rural communities than to get them, if they're getting that supervision and they're already working in a rural community, they're a whole lot more likely to go there. And so growing up your own in a rural community makes all the difference. So we try to take people from rural communities and pair them up with the rural communities to do this program. It works. Another thing is it's difficult to get good rural data. That's been a problem for as long as I've been alive. And we often have people that look on the internet and they take that as the gospel truth. And you all know There's a lot of not true stuff on the internet. And so we began working on this 3 years ago and making a true investment into the Rural Data Hub. We encourage you to go there and look at that. One of the things that I think is really phenomenal and very innovative is the Health Access Locator. We began this because all we've had for years is licensing data. But licensing data is only a snapshot in time. And it tells you what that doctor was doing at that time, but it doesn't give you a picture of access at all, because a doctor may have an active license, but they may be retired. They may be a medical director. They may be in academic medicine. They may not be seeing patients at all. And so you don't have an accurate reflection of who is seeing patients in a community. And so we came up with the Community Health Reporter. Dr. Sumner said, I wish that we could talk to people in rural communities and they could crowdsource it like you used to do with football Friday night scores. I thought, gosh, that's a great idea. And so we began talking with our friends at Mercer Engineering and Research Center to say, how do we crowdsource this data from the people who live and work there? Because they know who's seeing patients. Because it's often difficult, and we found this is a true instance. There's a doctor's office in a community, a rural community, and the sign is out front and the doctor's name there. So if you ride by there or you look up on the internet, you're going to think that that doctor's providing there, but that doctor's only there every fourth Friday from 12 till 2. That's a problem, right? That is not access. But you don't know that unless you know the people that live and work in that community that can tell you that's when that doctor's there, because they called them up and asked them. So they crowdsourced this information. We have 72 regions that they work for. They cover all 120 rural counties. They enter data twice a month. Once a quarter, they go to the facility physically to see and talk to the people that are there. And it stamps that on the app that they have. And so that is pretty much a live dashboard of what's going on in rural Georgia healthcare all of the time. So we're very proud of that program. We look to make it better all the time, but your data is only as good as the people who enter it. And so we are also working on a component that adds AI into the back end of that, where it then crawls the internet, and we're working on getting data that tells us where people are charging, where charges are originating from. So then it ups the reliability of that data so that we ensure that that's really great, reliable data all the time and we have access to it. So that's a really powerful tool in your back pocket to know exactly who's working in your communities, in your rural communities. And I told legislators last week, I'm sorry if you're not rural, because we don't cover non-rural counties. Also, the Farmers
Linda,
Wellbeing Project.
I'll just remind you, what's good for rural Georgia is good for the whole state.
All of
So
Georgia.
don't you worry about that.
That's exactly true. That's exactly true. And they'll know what's happening there better than they know what's happening in their districts. The Farmers Mental Wellbeing Project is a great project that we have a PhD in rural health sciences here. And our PhDs were looking at some data on farmer well-being. And the largest study that had ever been done was done with 77 participants, and they were farm owners. And we began seeing there are a lot of gaps in that, in what's going on with that. So we began partnering with the Georgia Foundation for Agriculture to go out to do the largest farm worker study that's ever been done in the United States. There were over 1,700 participants by the time it was over, of farm owners, managers, workers, spouses. And we began asking them questions, and to be perfectly honest, it was alarming. And I'll draw your attention to the bottom left-hand corner. For your healthcare access, 60% had no access to basic medical care, 50% had no health insurance. Farm managers and farm workers had significantly less access than the 60 to health care than the farm owners. And as if that is not bad enough, I'll call your attention to the other side of the screen, that top corner where it says generational status. First generation farmers versus the generational farmer. They had higher stress scores and they had fewer coping mechanisms. And notice I didn't say healthy coping mechanisms, because those coping mechanisms most used were drugs and alcohol. So they had less coping mechanisms, higher scores, less healthcare access than 60%. But the really alarming factor in this is that suicidal ideation, 61% of them had thought about dying by suicide in the past year, and 9% of them thought about it daily. That's shocking. It is shocking. And when we found that, I thought about the chairman from the Rural Development Council. What are you going to do about it? And it was not enough to know that, but we thought, what are we going to do about that? And that's when we developed the Georgia Agricultural Wellness Alliance. It is housed here at Mercer and funded through Mercer. We have fantastic partners, DBHD Deeds, Georgia Foundation for Agriculture, Georgia Farm Bureau, Department of Ag, UGA, and many others that said it's not okay what our farmers are going through. We have to give them support. We have to do things that work, and we have to include them in it. We've seen many times, and I know you all have, that people have a great idea, and while there's funding, they're there doing the work. And then when the funding's gone, they're gone. And we said, this cannot be one of those things. We have to ensure that we have help and support for our farmers because they feed us, they clothe us, and they support us. And we don't happen without them. And so GAWA is very important and near and dear to us. And so they go around and they have local GAWA groups, and they are always led by farmers. And our director of that is John McKelvin, and he grew up on a farm. It's still functioning. He and his dad and his brother still run that farm, and they work on programming and monitoring of farmers in rural communities. And so it's a fantastic program. Another one that's near and dear to our heart is Rural Opioid Misuse Project. We began speaking with a lady, Cami Wolf-Rice, who lost her son, and you'll see his picture there on the pen, is Christopher. Christopher had a chronic medical condition when he was a teenager, and at 13 he went and had surgery, and at that time opioids were the latest and greatest, and they were non-addictive and they were great for you, and he went home with 90 of them at 13. He had a follow-up surgery after that and went home with another 120. And from that time, I'm sure you know, his brain was hijacked. And so then when he no longer got them legally, then he turned to heroin. And he fought for a long time to stay alive and to stay clean. And when he was in his 30s, he had an overdose. And his mom said, I hid that for a long time because I didn't want his life to be overshadowed by how he died. And she said, and then I began thinking, we have a lot of things and a lot of money goes into once people are addicted, but nothing in the prevention side. And she said, had I known, I was his mother. I loved him. Those doctors that cared for him thought they were doing the right thing. I gave him that medicine every 6 hours. I thought I was helping him. And she thought, if I had had somebody, there's a coach for everything. If I'd had somebody on the front end of that could have helped us to know what to do besides give a pill, it would have been so much better. And that's when she developed a life care specialist. And so she modeled it off of a child life specialist. And that is a person trained in the hospital with you. You see them at pre-op. You talk about your pain plan. They talk with your doctor. They ask you the questions that you may have never been asked. Have you ever had an opioid misuse problem? Anybody in your home have an opioid misuse problem? Because chances are you're going to go home with a prescription. And if you're having to fight that battle along with trying to fight to keep yourself pain-free and to rehab, it's very difficult. And so this person goes in at pre-op, they go see this patient during their stay, and then they follow up with them afterwards, and they make a pain plan for how they're going to do this without opioids. It's a fantastic program. We now have 6 rural life care specialists. Some of them are in this picture right here. We're very proud of that program, and we're looking to expand that. We came up with a curriculum for that. We house that here at Mercer School of Medicine, and so they do their training and their practicums with us, and then they go off to do great things for prevention of opioid misuse in our rural communities. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is the Alliance for Better Care, Kids Alliance for Better Care. This is a project that we are in collaboration with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. You know, if you know Dr. Jean Sumner, she is a force, and she has great ideas, but sometimes she scares me because she'll come in there and she'll say, I have an idea. I'm thinking, oh, What's it going to be now? You know, but this was a fantastic one. And she said, I think we ought to call up Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I said, okay. And she said, they have a passion for children, and we have a real need to expand pediatric care in rural communities. But rural communities often don't have the capital to invest, and they don't have the volume to spend the time and energy to do this training. But the children are our future of our rural communities. You know, with the stats that came out recently about more are dying in rural communities than are being born, we've got to fix that. Because rural Georgia is where it's at, and that's the place to be. And but we've got to get our kids healthy and wanting to stay in our communities, and that takes all of us. So it's got to have great care. So we began this collaboration. It's a $200 million investment over 10 years to transform rural care in rural Georgia. And so there are many facets, and I'm going to talk about those in this. The first one that we do is we go into rural hospitals, and we partner with them. And we bring that equipment that they need. We saw the graphic about no labor and delivery units. Well, guess what happens when a baby's born and it's got to be quick and there's no OB within an hour or so? They go to the emergency room. So whether you've got an OB there or not, that baby's coming. And so you're going to have to deliver that. And we saw that time and again. They don't have time for transfer, and sometimes there's nowhere to transfer to. And so we began doing this in these rural emergency rooms to train them how to take care of children. Oftentimes, and particularly during the pandemic, we saw that children were being transferred for things that they should not be transferred for. And that creates an undue burden on the child and on that family. And sometimes you don't need to go. And we found out a child was transferred when they should have gotten a treatment at their local hospital, but they did not feel comfortable or they did not have the equipment to do that. And so that's part of what this does. It brings that equipment, it brings that training, because even if you have all the equipment in the world, if you don't know how to use it and you don't have physicians and nurses that are comfortable using it, it doesn't matter. And so we develop that training, we have the certifications for them, and we have continuous simulation. We have a simulation person that trains all of the time. We do hundreds of hours of continuing education. And remember, all of that is free. So that these hospitals can take advantage of that to raise the level of pediatric care. So people no longer have to, when they have these emergencies, they don't have to drive to a big tertiary care center. Now, some things we can't do, and some things we shouldn't do. But the things that we can, we should do it as well or better than the big cities. And so that's what this program's about. Next is our rural pediatrician support. Over 60 of our 120 counties don't have a pediatrician. Some of our rural counties still don't have a doctor. And so, but the pediatricians that we have and the family medicine providers that we have do a fantastic job taking care of kids. But they may not have seen some things and some illnesses, because remember about the volume, since they were in training. And so we go into these pediatric offices to take great care of them. But sometimes they have children that need to go see subspecialists outside of their home county. And so what we do is take training in there, but we also provide high-quality telehealth units within their office. And this is not just a video chat. These are all the peripherals, so they can do eyes, ears, nose, throat, palpation, heart, all of those things. They can hear those lung sounds, and we connect them with subspecialists that are ready and waiting to take these patients from rural communities. We give them real-time access to subspecialists. It saves the family from having to drive out of town. Sometimes they don't have transportation. Sometimes they've got to decide, do I go to work or do I lose my job? And so that makes those appointments very difficult, especially if you have a chronically ill child. It also, the thing that it does is raises the level of care in that pediatrician's office. Because even if they have to go out of town to get that subspecialty care, when they have an acute problem, guess where they end up? In the ED or the pediatrician's office. And if they haven't been a part of any of that care that's going on, you don't have continuity of care. And the chances are that you're going to have a less favorable outcome for that child. So this raises that level of care because the pediatrician or family medicine doctor is involved in that subspecialty visit along with the child and their family. So it makes for better outcomes for health care and for better communication for all the doctors involved. And so that's better for the family and children. And then, of course, rural pediatric mental health. We go into rural schools and we give wellness screenings for 3rd grade through 12th grade in our communities. And we work with them to then do interventions if they score high on that wellness or mental health that they're in distress. We provide pediatric mental health initiative. We also work with Emory, and we also work with Children's Psychiatric Services to go in and do interventions to help them. We started with a pilot with 2 rural schools. We're now in 8 school systems, and we're expanding that as we go. Project sites. This is just a few of them. We have others that are not on this map. We are in about 47 counties, and we're 2.5 years in. So we're moving at a rapid pace. We're looking to expand more. We announce our next cohort in January as we expand services into rural Georgia. A part that's not on here because the center doesn't do the action arm of that, but a part of that that is not on here is the pediatric rural scholars. And you're going to see some Nathan Deal today, but another complement to that is that Children's Healthcare of Atlanta has given 10 pediatric scholarships for a full ride for 10 years. So that's 100 new pediatricians that'll live and work in rural Georgia because all scholarships at Mercer are paid back in time and service in rural Georgia. And so they loved how that was going, so then they added on that they're giving 10 marriage and family therapist scholarships for 10 a year for 10 years. So there'll be 100 marriage and family therapists in rural Georgia living and working. Wouldn't it be a powerhouse if they were all in the same office providing those services for families? So that is the quick version. There are a lot of things that we do that I couldn't talk about today. We're in all 120 counties in Georgia doing at least one program or project. If there's something that you've heard about or something that you have an idea for, we are the Innovation Center for a reason. We'd love to hear great ideas, and we love to put those into action. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to get in contact with me later about an idea that you have, I welcome that too.
Glenda, I'm blown away by the scope of programs that you have in place.
We've got more.
Well, we'll have to have you at a future meeting to hear about
Great.
those as well. And members, I know some of you may have questions or comments, and if you do, just let me know, Chairman Hatchett.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Glenda, you did an awesome job, great things going on, and y'all, I get to hear about some of this quite often, and they use a gazillion acronyms, and you did great at not using acronyms, so thank you very much, but great presentation. And does anybody else have a question? Can I say something? So I hope y'all definitely are staying for the Nathan Deal Luncheon. It is always a very moving experience. It'll make you feel, it's a feel-good luncheon. So I hope you can stay. For those on the committee, we do have some shuttles that are going to be taking you to the UC if you so would like, and if not, we can try to direct you there. So I hope you stick around.
Vice Chair of this committee, Representative Campbell.
Just thank you for what you're doing for the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you again. Well, we are at the hour where we need to wrap this up and head over to the, what'd you call it, the UC? Another acronym? Okay.
No, I said University Center.
I don't know about that. Anyway, couple of announcements. Remember, our next meeting will be November 5th up at the CLOB in Atlanta. Also, I have a very happy announcement. I just received a text message from our dear friend, Chairman Rick Jaspers, who he and Miss Marcia have a grandson that was born, Haywood Christopher. He is out in this world and doing well, and so is his mother. So we just want to say congratulations to our good friend, Chairman Jaspers, and his family. What? There, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, does anybody have anything else to add for the good of the order before we adjourn? Okay, very good. Well, remember to get on the shuttle if you'd like to make use of that, and I hope you will. And thank you all for being here today. This meeting is adjourned.